Time now for us to do who had a bad Talladega and who excelled at Talladega. One of your answers cannot be Ryan Blaney. We've already talked about him. We know he won. So, Alexis, we'll start with you. We're going to go – you want to go good or bad first?
Let's go good.
All right, we're going to start with the positive. Because that's how we are. We're all sunshine.
Start with the positive. So this guy had a really up and down day, but when it all was said and done, he had a positive finish, and that was Denny Hamlin. For a while there, it looked like he was going to maybe be on the bad list, not the good list, after a speeding penalty got him a lap down. Took him a little while to get his lap back. But when the dust cleared and the race was over, he finished third, which was a really good day for him. He started out the day with a good amount of points that had him feeling like he was in a safe position, but had he finished a lap down and not got that lap back, he would have lost quite a bit. So good day all around for Denny Hamlin.
All right, Jeff Hammond, who else had a positive day at Talladega?
Well, let's continue along with the theme of getting a lap back, and that has to point to Austin Cindric, who qualified 7th, and throughout the race, it's shown he had a fast race car, and by the end of the day, he had rallied back from being lapped down, got himself a top 5 finish, and but more importantly, he led 7 times for 15 laps. He was one of the highest leading cars at the racetrack, so I'm sure that made him feel good because he's had a pretty dismal season.
Yep, I've got to agree with that. Brad Gilly.
Yeah, well, I think the race fans had a really good time with 70 lead changes. But on the racetrack, I'm going to take Corey LaJoie. And, based on the last lap and the way things turned out, some drivers might not be quite as happy. But what ultimately is now a 4th-place finish for them, Spire has been doing some pretty decent things here recently. They've been qualifying well. They've been practicing well. Finishing well is something that they still need to continue to work on. And they've been better this year. But to come out of Talladega with a 4th-place finish, I think, was a great day for them for sure.
To kind of echo what you and Jeff Hammond said, Corey LaJoie finished 4th. 5th was Austin Cindric. Justin Haley came home 6th. Riley Herbst, kind of in a substitute role, picked up a 9th place finish. And that's the beautiful thing when you go to Daytona and Talladega. A lot of the drivers that we don't normally talk about finishing in the top half of the pack can actually come in and having a really strong day. So kudos to all of those folks that managed to fight their way into a top 10 finish. Now we will move over to the dark side of the force and those that had a bad day. Brad Gilly, since you laughed, you get to go first.
All right. I'm going to say the driver who finished last. Oh, wait. Now it's second to last. But I will take Ross Chastain. Look, they came into this race on the plus side of the point standings of plus 12. And here's a track where last year he went to victory lane during the spring race. But to leave here with a 37th place finish and now be -9 behind the cut line, that is a huge hit. A huge hit after they rallied back and finished runner-up the week before at Texas Motor Speedway. So I would say when it comes to a playoff contender, they got it the worst.
It's a bad day for Ross Chastain. Jeff Hammond?
Well, I think right now when I look at what went on it there as far as somebody having a bad day, has to be a young man who is trying to turn a lot of heads, which he's been doing since he got into running Cup cars, especially the 42 car. And I'm talking about Carson Hocevar. A lot of people talking about the future of this young man and where he may wind up going and who he may be driving for. But I think he learned a very valuable lesson yesterday, Doug. And unfortunately, it took out some guys and upset a lot of competitors at Talladega because of the move he made. And again, I think that Brad Keselowski was very generous and at the same time, very understanding with the fact that he pulled up in front of him running about 3 miles an hour slower than he was ready to be going. And all of a sudden we had what was the only big one at Talladega.
Then you had Stenhouse running out of gas, creating a smaller incident earlier in the race. A couple of uncharacteristic things. Alexis?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. He was somebody who was already in a pretty big hole when the day started. Now he's, negative 26 points off of the cut going into the Roval, which, historically, we're not seeing Kyle Busch do really well at that racetrack. So, I think he really needed a good day yesterday, and he got caught up in an incident and unfortunately was not able to get a good finish and therefore is, unfortunately, the last person in the bottom four and has a really, really hard day ahead of them coming up Sunday at the Roval.
Yeah, he's got a lot of catching up to do, so we'll see if Kyle Busch, who has 3 wins this year, but they really seem to have dropped off here in the second half.
You know, I think we need this one thing I wanted to point out is that Talladega, which is normally, we're always talking about the big one and how it affects the outcome of that race. I was kind of like refreshingly surprised that we had 4 caution flags for only 19 laps. And, you know, one of those was a pretty hard hit, you know, that involved, you know, Austin Dillon and several other guys because of Hocevar and Brad Keselowski getting together. But the thing is, after what we saw on Saturday for the truck race, which almost 50% of the race was run under caution, for the Cup guys to come in and put on a heck of a show, and a lot of, you know, we talked about the drivers that we surprised got top 10 finishes. You know, a lot of times you see those people at the end of the day up there because of the big one. The other day and yesterday, it was because they raced well.
They did put on a good show, and sometimes 4 wide, and they kept it together. I want to say this about that. Let's say we ran all 3 series there, and the truck race has 27 cautions for 105 laps. And then you run the Xfinity race, and it has 13 cautions for 50 laps. And then you run the Cup race, and Alexis is over here nodding because she knows where I'm going, and it has 6 cautions. Look at the drivers in the series. The drivers in the truck series, for the most part, if you take out a couple of guys whose careers have just stopped in the trucks, are young guys trying to prove themselves. They're all full of testosterone, and they drive off the hood of their cars. They're not as good at drivers as in the Xfinity Series. And you move up, and the Xfinity Series are a little bit better drivers, but they're not Cup drivers for the most part. Every year, 1 or 2 of them gets promoted up. So when we look at all of these factors that go into all of these cautions, the things that we have to keep telling ourselves, we say it all the time. What do we say about Cup drivers, Alexis? They're the best.
Yeah, drivers in the world.
Best stock car drivers in the world.
Yep.
Okay, maybe they really are, which would inherently mean that they're better than the guys that drive on Friday and on Saturday. Am I wrong, Jeff?
No, you're hitting everything right down the middle. But at the same time, you still, from time to time, you don't see such a almost near perfect race like we did yesterday.
You know what's funny about that, though, is we go to a super speedway and we're like, oh, only 4 cautions. So refreshing. And then the Roval comes up and there's, 2 or 3 cautions. We're like, where's all the cautions? We need more cautions. So it's just kind of funny how the racetrack dictates how you feel about something one way or the other.
Well, that gets into the baseline of human nature, and we're never satisfied because we're always striving for the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why we moved out of mud huts into skyscrapers. It's a much deeper issue here.
I hear you.
We'll get into that on the next episode of Fast Talk.